He was born in 1953 in the Republic of Ireland. He speaks English, French, Spanish, German, and Japanese. He used to work at the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs. He was the Secretary General of the European Commission.
Well, hello, and it's a very great pleasure to be in Vietnam. We deeply value our relationship with Vietnam and Europe's hopes that we can contribute to the greater prosperity of Vietnam and to closer relationship between our peoples and to the prosperity and stability of the Asian region.
Hello, Mr. O'Sullivan, and welcome to Vietnam.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So, what do you think when you come? What do you think when you become the very first guest from EEAS to visit Vietnam?
Well, we attach huge importance to our relations with Vietnam. We have long historical ties between Europe and Vietnam, and this is a country whose great progress economically and socially we have watched with great admiration. And we are anxious to improve and deepen our relationship with Vietnam. This year we will conclude our partnership and cooperation agreement, and we hope that we will be able to launch negotiations for a future free trade and investment agreement which will deepen our economic and investment relations.
In your statement before visiting Vietnam, you mentioned that you came here in the year of the dragon. So how could you know that ideas of Vietnamese people?
Well, I've always taken a great interest in Asia. I lived in Japan as a young official, and in fact I had the opportunity to come to visit Vietnam with my family in 2007. We came and we spent 3 weeks here. So we were very impressed by the beauty of the country and the friendliness of the people. Well, I've only just looked around very quickly because I only arrived last night, but the first thing that struck me was when I was here last 5 years ago, there were some bicycles, but lots of scooters. Now there's lots of scooters but also quite a lot of cars.
So from the meaning of this important visit from you as the representative of EEAS to Vietnam, so how can we understand the position of Vietnam to the general external policy of Europe?
Well, the EU is not geographically a part of the Asia-Pacific region, but we attach huge importance to this region. We know it's going to be one of the driving houses of the 21st century, both economically and politically, and we want to, as Europeans, contribute to the prosperity of the region and to the peace and stability of the region. This involves, of course, our relations with individual countries such as Vietnam, but also with the region more generally through the ASEAN, with whom we have strong relations, and more widely. And this year we will see 3 very important meetings. We will see the foreign ministers of ASEAN meeting in Brunei in April. We will have the Asian Regional Forum, the ASEAN Regional Forum in Phnom Penh in July, and then we will have the ASEM Summit, bringing together all the heads of state and government of Europe and of Asia in Vientiane in Laos in November. So we will have a lot of very high-level visits by European politicians to the region, including to Vietnam, and we hope that this will strengthen and deepen our ties.
Vietnam and the EU enjoy an increasingly strong and broad partnership based upon mutual respect and confidence. The EU welcomes Vietnam's commitment to take on increasingly international responsibilities, be it in the WTO, the World Trade Organization, in the United Nations, and within ASEAN. The EU was a strong supporter of Vietnam's accession to the WTO. It cooperated extremely well with Vietnam during its very efficient chairmanship of ASEAN in 2010. The time has now come to enhance further both sides' cooperation on issues of global concerns, including tackle climate change, promoting security, non-proliferation and nuclear safety, as well as preventing pandemics and natural disasters.
To find beautiful messages.
So for the last few years, Vietnam and the EU enjoy a strong relation. And could you please give the general comments of yours on the development of the bilateral relation, especially let's take the FTA negotiation process and PCA as an example for this relations.
Well, I think the PCA, Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, provides a framework in which we can increase our dialogue on many important issues of concern. These can be in the area of international political developments, in the area of cooperation. We contribute development assistance to Vietnam to the tune of around €1 billion, where we help in a wide range of issues, including, for example, trade facilitation, helping Vietnamese companies adapt and prepare for competing on the international market. Our trade relations have grown and thrived. Last year, Vietnamese exports to Europe, notwithstanding the euro difficulties, grew by nearly 35-36%. And European investment in Vietnam is about the second or third highest of all the investors. We believe, nonetheless, that there is huge potential for further developing these relations, and that is why we think it would be very beneficial to negotiate a free trade and investment agreement between us, and we are confident that the talks are going well and that we should be able to launch these negotiations soon.
So many economies in the world, including Vietnam and the EU members, are now facing some challenges. So those challenges will affect somehow the negotiation between Vietnam and EU for the free trade agreement or not?
No, I think quite the contrary. The challenges we're facing should encourage us to conclude a free trade agreement and to further liberalize trade. Throughout all of the economic difficulties we've been having in Europe over the last few years, everyone in Europe believes that further trade liberalization, keeping markets open and increasing trade flows is part of the solution, not part of the problem. And there is a great appetite in Europe for continued trade liberalization. From Vietnam's perspective, I think there is much to be gained from such an agreement. For example, you face a major challenge of inflation. One of the ways of dealing with inflation is to reduce barriers on imports and to make them cheaper. So I think the economic challenges we all face would be facilitated by concluding a trade and investment agreement, which would put trade and investment relations on a transparent and permanent legal footing between us for many years to come, which would provide certainty of new opportunities for our businesses.
So how can the PCA have the free trade agreement negotiation process make more progress?
Well, these two agreements are complementary to each other. The PCA is about a framework of cooperation, of dialogue, and discussion between us. The trade and investment agreement is, of course, a more traditional trade negotiation where people give and take concessions and make deals. But I believe that the existence of a partnership and cooperation agreement already indicates the high degree of commitment we have to deepening our relations and would provide a good political backdrop for the trade negotiations, which I am confident could proceed quickly and lead to a mutually satisfactory outcome.
The conclusion at the end of 2010 of a new Vietnam-EU Partnership and Cooperation Agreement marked a quantitative and decisive step in the way to two sides engage as equal partners. There is profound admiration in Europe for the way Vietnam has managed to embrace reform and lift millions of its citizens out of poverty. The record of $1 billion ODA pledge made by the EU and its member states for 2012 confirmed its confidence in Vietnam's futures and its capacity to pull itself out of poverty. But the commitment of the EU to keeping its market open is actually the best contribution the both sides can make to creating more growth and employment in Vietnam and in the EU. Integration in international markets has been the driver of Vietnam and the EU's strong economic result in the past, and will continue to play that role in the future. This is why Vietnam and the EU look forward to progress towards an ambitious and mutually beneficial Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement (FTA).
Vietnam at this moment are taking some kind of measures to tackle with some difficulties in the economy. For example, the restructuring the banking and financial system. So what are your assessment on the effectiveness of this measure?
Well, I wouldn't like to comment on domestic Vietnamese economic policies. We think that Vietnam has made a huge amount of progress in the last decade or so, and we have witnessed with admiration what you've been able to achieve. I think what is important is that Vietnam keeps on the track of liberalization and openness and greater openness to the global economy. Because this is the way forward for prosperity, and we think it's important for Vietnam to resist any tendency, however small, towards any kind of protectionism.
So what will be your expectation for the bilateral relation in the future?
Well, I hope that this year we can finalize the partnership and cooperation agreement, that we can launch the free trade agreement negotiations, and that we can continue to cooperate in the region, both through ASEAN and bilaterally.
So on behalf of EEAS, what would you love to address to the Vietnamese people through this trip to Vietnam?
Well, I would like them to see it as an indication of the admiration we have for this country, of the affection we have for this country, and of our desire to have deep and close trade and political relations with Vietnam, also contributing through Vietnam to the peace and prosperity of the region.
Once again, thank you so much, Mr. David O'Sullivan, for taking your time and joining the program of our television.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thưa quý vị và các bạn, chuyến thăm lần này của Thứ trưởng Ngoại giao Liên minh châu Âu tới Việt Nam là chuyến thăm đầu tiên của một quan chức ngoại giao cấp cao của Cơ quan Ngoại giao Liên minh châu Âu kể từ khi cơ quan này được thành lập năm 2009. Tiếp theo chương trình, mời quý vị và các bạn cùng đến với câu chuyện hội nhập của ngày hôm nay cùng với biên tập viên Khánh Long.
Cảm ơn biên tập viên Mai Phương. Quý vị và các bạn thân mến, y học cổ truyền cùng với y học hiện đại đã góp phần không nhỏ đẩy lùi nhiều bệnh tật, cứu sống nhiều người bệnh. Tuy nhiên, để việc chữa trị bệnh tiện dụng và hiệu quả hơn, y học cổ truyền cũng cần phải được hiện đại hóa để phối hợp hiệu quả với y học hiện đại trong điều trị, khám và chữa bệnh. Thông tin chi tiết hơn sẽ được đề cập trong chương trình ngày hôm nay.